Awesome. So thanks everyone for joining today. Yeah, really appreciate everyone's attendance. Today we'll be looking at, is Volunteer Impact the right software for your volunteer organization? And we'll be exploring, I guess, how your organization can evaluate better impact, but also kind of compare us to other vendors as well and other products. So just a quick introduction to myself. So my name's Didier. I'm a software sales advisor at Better Impact. I'm actually located in Geelong, in Victoria. So I've basically been working in 10 years in technology, helping and advising organizations in their digital platforms. Spent the last year advising a diverse range of organizations how to make the most out of Better Impact, and kind of managing the change for that volunteer management system. I do have extensive knowledge of Better Impact, the volunteer module, but also the client, donor, and member modules that we offer as well. But today we'll be looking at our volunteer management software and how you can make the most out of that and evaluate that software as well. Now, today we'll be looking at some common problems facing volunteer service teams. So I'll be asking a couple of questions that everyone can answer in the chat, just to give everyone an idea of some common issues that everyone is facing. So that will be 3 questions coming your way. I'll be looking at why the right software tools matter. I'll also be doing a high-level overview of volunteer impact. So kind of a brief demo of kind of the main features. And then I'll have a few resources at the end, including that link, that certificate of your attendance today. So some common problems a lot of volunteer managers are facing. Too much data entry. So that can be from Excel, multiple other kind of platforms and systems you're using in one. Using disconnected tools to do your job. So this can be things like Salesforce to manage your volunteers, things that are not designed to do the things that you need. Not enough time to lead and engage your volunteers. So this is something that we want to free the time up for you to engage more with your volunteers. So we're hoping that our volunteer management software can help you free time, can manage things in a more timely manner for you and make that process easier. Find affordable tools, leadership will approve. So that's something else we understand, that sometimes it can be a lengthy approval process. You got to go through a number of different avenues to get software approved. We're here to help you through that process and do everything we need to get you over the line. And of course, a big issue at the moment, and a big thing that a lot of organizations are focusing on, is insufficient security of your confidential data. So that is a number of things that we want to help and assist you with, and a big focus for us. And of course, that solution is Volunteer Impact. So we're going to look into a little bit more into those topics today. So firstly, on the data security. So one easy way, I guess, to understand if an organization has the right security and privacy in place is the ISO certification. So ISO 27001 is the world's best known standard for information security management systems. ISO certification basically means that the VMS vendor respects all the best practices enshrined in the international standard. Having the actual certificate rather than simply following the guidelines is an important distinction, because that basically means that the vendor has been audited by an independent body once a year to make sure those standards are met. So that's something we've just done again recently. We do every year, and we think that's a really important aspect of an organization, especially when you're managing volunteer data. Now, question for everyone. Question 1, which problem resonates you most with your organization? So you can just answer with a number in the box? Is it number one, too much data entry? Number two, too many disconnected tools? Number three, not enough time to lead and engage? Number four, affordable tools leadership will approve? Or number five, insufficient security of your confidential data? Now you can answer multiple numbers if you like as well. And I'll read out a couple of the answers here. So the most common is number two at the moment. So using too many disconnected tools to do your job, which is interesting. Number one is quite common as well. So too much data entry. I think everyone can relate to that problem. Adams said all the above. So you can see, so he's definitely dealing with a couple of things there, and definitely needs a volunteer management system. We've got another one that's 1, 2, 3, and 5. 1, 2, 3, and 4 as well. 1 and 4. So probably the most common are number 1 and number 2. But a lot of organizations are dealing with multiple all in one. So that's interesting to get that perspective. Now, question number 2, how are you managing your volunteers currently? Is it number 1, a spreadsheet? Number 2, another volunteer management software? Or number 3, other, something like a Salesforce or another platform? So most common is number 1 at the moment, spreadsheets, and a lot of number 3 as well. That's quite interesting. A lot of other people, I guess, are using things like Salesforce. Maybe some of you, if you don't mind, you can, if you have answered other, if you can put in what the platform is. You don't have to, just so we can get an idea of what that is. Workday is one, which we do see quite a bit. Had a couple of people answer number 2. One person's already using Better Impact, so that's good to know. Someone is using CIM and Academy. Okay, I've heard a little bit about them, but not sure if I know much about it. Nightingale, someone else is using, that's interesting. And another Better Impact. So quite interesting, a big variety. A lot of people using spreadsheets, a lot of people using, things that are not designed for volunteer management. So interesting to get that perspective from everyone. So last question. In your opinion, what's most at risk if a change doesn't occur sooner than later? Is it number 1, volunteer turnover, disengagement? Number 2, staff turnover and disengagement? Number 3, wasted budget? Number 4, damage to organization program reputation? Or number 5, other? Got number 1 and 2. Again, number 2 seems the most common. Staff turnover and disengagement. Had a lot of number 1s just come in. So volunteer turnover, disengagement. So they're the most common. Volunteer and staff turnover is the most at risk if a change doesn't occur. I think everyone here can relate to that, because it's one thing to recruit volunteers, but it's also another thing to retain them, get the right volunteers for the right role, and not kind of lose that interest of those volunteers. So thanks everyone for answering those questions, and yeah, really interesting for everyone and myself to get that perspective. And then I can kind of cater my demo later to kind of combat some of those issues. So to kind of talk on a little bit more about the disconnected tools and the staff members. So more than half of all employees are unhappy at work because of the software tools they're using. So that's quite an alarming stat to see. That can be a mix of using the wrong tool, using multiple tools to try and do the same thing. A mix of everything there, but that's quite interesting that half of the people are unhappy because of the tools they're using. Similar to that, 1 in 8 employees has quit a job because of mismatched software. So again, that would be a mix of using the wrong piece of software, using multiple software to do the same thing. Quite alarming, 1 in 8 people have basically quit a job because they're not happy with the software. So that's why having that right tool is so important. Of course, it's important to keep your volunteers, but staff, retaining your staff is obviously, such an important thing in this industry. And having the right software obviously is a huge impact on that. So let's get your team working with the tools that make you feel less frustrated and rather more empowered and productive when you do your job. So now I'm going to explore volunteer impact and how you can achieve that and explore a little bit of a demo of the software. So I'm going to start basically with the start of our process, which is basically the recruiting. So Volunteer Impact is an end-to-end volunteer management system. We aim to do everything in the process from the very start to the advertisement to the very end, the reporting, and basically everything in between. So Volunteer Impact, it's very customizable. You can create different fields, different settings, everything in the system that kind of works for your organization. So anything you need to do in the system, any field that you need to create can be done in the system. And it's all about kind of making that database and that system work for you and finding the best mix of all the features we have. So this page here is what we call the advertisement page or the landing page. This is essentially one of the first things a potential volunteer will see. This is usually connected to your website. So maybe on your website, you might have a little button like this saying volunteer now, see volunteer opportunities, something similar that the volunteers will click on. You can also send out a link or send out a QR code for volunteers to get to this page. So important to note as well.
Nice chat as always.
This is also customizable. So basically, if you don't want a landing page, you can actually send a volunteer directly to the application form where they're creating their account and they're filling in those fields you need. A lot of organizations do have that landing page because like you see here, you can basically advertise different roles. You can have some pictures, videos, brief descriptions of what those different roles encompass. Then you can have a little bit more information. You can kind of have the shift info, a little bit of description, and then some special events you might have coming up as well. So it's a good way to advertise things, have any special events advertised on this page as well. And this page is also managed by the admins in the system. You don't need to go to the IT team to make these changes. It's all managed from the system. So if you're an admin in the system, you'll have access to this. It's all live. So whatever you do change is going to change straight away for you. Now, once a volunteer clicks in the fill-in application page, that will take them to this page here. Now, most of the time, a volunteer will be clicking create a new account. So basically, they can do this themselves. The admins are not, they don't have to do this for them. It is an option. You can manually create a volunteer's profile in the system if you want. You can also do an import of volunteer information. So a lot of organizations, what they do is do an import for all their existing volunteers. They might import, all the basic info and then a couple of other fields like date they've joined, how many hours they've done historically, some important info that you want to get in there that the volunteer doesn't need to do. And then from there, basically you get all the new volunteers to come in here and create a new account and start that application process. So when they do create an account with us, quite a simple process. They do a username, email address. Email is sent to them. So it's basically verifying their identity and that email as well. Now, if they do volunteer with us with another organization, they can actually log in and use those same credentials. So a lot of volunteers might volunteer at multiple different organizations. Even sometimes you might have, we have like an enterprise system where you have separate databases based on the location, based on the different areas of interest. That can also be logged into the same. So if a volunteer's volunteering for a number of different sub-accounts that you have or different locations, they can have the same login and log in that way as well. Now, on this page, you can also have some policies or disclaimers at the top here. One example might be, please have your background check or your working with children's check handy. You will need to upload this during the application form. So just letting them know that process is about to happen, so they're prepared and they don't get surprised, once they create an account. So once they create that account and verify that email address, that takes them to the application form. Now, the application form is 2 pages. Page number 1 is all the basic info. So name, address, phone number. Page number 2 is the really customizable information. So you can have things like when they're available, so they can tick specific days, specific time of day as well. And then you can search for that in the system, and then you can see when they're available to work those shifts. They can also give you an indication of what role they're interested in volunteering for. You can then search for that in the system. You can see that on their profile. So when you are doing a roster or when you are filling a role, you can search for that and see what role they have ticked. Then the more detailed information can be put on this application form here. So you can have things like qualifications. So this can be a simple yes/no question. It can be, another option, so they can have a drop down of different options. You can also have a date field that's automatically tracked in the system, and that will tell you if that's about to expire or that is expired. Once they do upload that, you can also select which one of these fields are mandatory. So if you need a driver's license, for example, you can make that field mandatory. Then you'll have the custom fields. So custom fields is essentially anything you want it to be in the system, any field you want to create, or any, feedback or information you want to hear from a volunteer, you can create in the system yourself. There's no limit to how many custom fields you have. You can have as many or as little as you need in that application process. So this can be text boxes, drop downs, date boxes, tick boxes, and even file fields. So if you do need, things like background checks, working with children's checks actually uploaded into the system, you can do that at that application process. So straight away, as soon as they apply, they're uploading those documents for you. You can make them mandatory. You can also make that field have an approval step. So for example, if you've got a background check uploaded and you want, to approve that before it's made official, you want to check the number, or you just want to make sure it's the right file they've uploaded, you can add an approval step to that. And that's going to come into the same spot for you. So you can go in and approve all those fields in one. Now you can have things like languages, references, agreements and acknowledgements, anything that you deem, important in that first step you can do. Now, once another new feature actually that's just come up here is an e-signature document. So it's just a new feature, but basically you can upload documents and add a signature field. So they're adding an e-signature to specific documents. So if you've got any important policy agreements or anything like that, you can put that as an e-signature directly in that first application form. Now, once the volunteer clicks submit, they're either going to get an automated message on the screen or an automated email to let them know the next steps. All the admins in the system will also get an email to let them know there's a new applicant in the system. And this volunteer is going to end up in one of these statuses here. So most of the time, they'll come in as an applicant. And that's basically when you need to do some vetting. You need to make sure the volunteer is right for your organization, or you might have an interview process, whatever that process is for your organization. If you don't have any vetting and you're basically accepting all volunteers, you can skip that status there and put them directly into accepted. That's something you can change in the settings, but most of the time, organizations will have some vetting going on. So they'll go into one of these statuses here as an applicant. Now, these statuses is an easy way, I guess, to onboard volunteers. If they are unsuccessful, we do have an archived status here with some sub statuses, rejected, didn't start, dismissed. We've also got inactive, which is basically those volunteers who are on a shorter long-term break, but are wanting to come back and volunteer. So it's an easy way to, I guess, put the volunteers into different statuses and then onboard them when they do come in as an applicant. When they come in as an applicant, basically you can go in to all those applications. You can have a look at all that information they've filled out. You can then individually or bulk send out an email to let them know what their steps are. Now, you might have sent out an automated email once they do apply. You can put things like, please complete this training. Please accept this privacy policy. A number of different things that might be involved in that next step. But in this example, if you wanted to send out a manual email, you can have a number of different email templates, and you might need a background check. So that code is going to be the first name of the volunteer, and you can send that out to all your applicants there. So when you are ready to move them to the next step, you can individually or you can in bulk change them to the next status. So you might change them to in process. If, for example, you have to organize an interview or a phone call, and they're going to be moved into the next status, or you might move them directly to accepted if they've done all the training, privacy policies, everything you need done in the system as well. So that's an easy way for all your admins to manage those volunteers and see that pretty clearly in the front page as well. Now, on the front page, you've got a number of different notifications and alerts to kind of help you navigate certain things. You've got basic things like birthdays, so you can send out an email directly from there. Same with the anniversaries. That will let you know how many years of service they have when they have volunteered. Then you've got things like custom field and qualification approvals. So like I mentioned earlier, you can put an approval step on certain files. So you've got your files here. You can then approve that to make that official in the system before you've approved that. Same with the qualifications, you can add an approval. You can also add expiring and expired qualifications. So that's automatically tracked in the system. That will let you know what date that's expired. You can obviously send an email or update that info from here. You can also change how many days that will alert you. Now, as well as the qualifications and custom field approvals, you can also add hours approval. So in some cases, there's a number of different ways that hours can be done. There's a clock in, clock out system that can be done through the app, which is called My Impact, or through a QR code that can be done. A QR code can be generated from the system and then can be put on a name tag, for example, which we also have a name tag generator, and they can log in that way. They can log their hours through the app when they're finished. So once they've finished their shift, they go on and log their hours for the day. There can be auto log of hours. So if they're working 9 to 5 on a Friday, that's going to automatically log for them. Or the admins can actually log hours on their behalf, or they can clock in and clock out for them from their profile. So if you're using the clock in, clock out system, for example, you might want to add an approval step in case someone forgets to clock out. You can basically go in and edit that. And then when you're ready, go in and approve that hours log. On the front page as well, you can manage things like a newsletter that can be sent out to the volunteers. And you've got a kind of a basic comparisons tab. This will show you some fields that the volunteers have entered. This can be hours, number of people in a group, personal interactions, whatever important info that you want to see when you're logging in, that can be configured on the front page. Admins will also have their own pin searches and favorites on the front page. So that will basically make things easy for you to navigate. If you're searching things, multiple times a week, you can just pin that on the front page and make that process easier. Now, when a volunteer applies, a profile gets created for them. Now, this profile will show obviously some contact info that they've entered. You can actually select certain custom fields that come up the top here. So if there's any fields that you find that's really important for the other admins to see, you can put that at the top of their profile. You can also see hours they've contributed and also badges in the system. So you can actually create your own badges in the system. This can be based on number of hours, years of service, qualifications, or training they've completed. That seems to be quite popular for the volunteers, where they can kind of get those badges on their profile, and when they log in, that will show up the top for them. Now, admins can edit a contact info or custom fields at any point as well. So if there is someone who is having trouble accessing their profile, you can go in and edit some of that info for them. You can also upload documents on their behalf, or kind of go in and approve things individually when it does have an approval step as well. You can also see what their general interests are, if they're generally available, and also send out emails and communication. So you can send out an email to one volunteer from their profile. You can also send out a text. So we do have up to 5,000 free texts per year in the system. That is just a one-way text message, but it's really handy for reminders. You can also send personal messages to the volunteers. So when they log in, that message will show on their front page. Email history and text message history also comes up on their profile. So you can see what has been sent out to the volunteers. You can also save confidential note logs on the volunteer's profile. So if you have a phone call, for example, with a volunteer, you can log what that call was about. Only the other admins will be able to see what that information is, and the volunteer won't be able to see that info. You can also assign a volunteer from a profile. So this example might be when you have some regulars. So let's say, for example, you've got a volunteer that works every Monday and Friday, and they start at 9 o'clock, both shifts. You can go in filter those shifts down, and then you can in bulk sign that volunteer up to that role. So that's a really good way to start building your roster. Get in those regulars first, and then you know what spaces need to be filled after those regulars have been put in. Once they are scheduled, either the admins have scheduled the volunteers or the volunteers have signed up themselves. You can mix and match based on the role. But basically a schedule is generated. Now, admins can see this view. Volunteers can also log in and see a monthly calendar. They can also opt into a weekly reminder of their shifts. And also quite a good feature is they can actually connect their personal calendar. So Google, Yahoo, Outlook, whatever they use, to the system. So if you do make any changes to their shift, they actually get notified directly on their phone. And in some cases, they don't even need to log in to see those changes. It's basically notified directly on their phone. And as we know, everyone uses their phone these days, and it can be the easiest way to communicate with those volunteers. Now, you can also see the hours logged in a volunteer's profile. Like I said earlier, you can start the clock if they clock in and for some reason can't use the app, or you can do a new time log entry. This can be done individually, but this can also be done in bulk. So, for example, if you've had 10 people, volunteers that have done the same role and they've all worked 9 to 5, you can log that in one log for all 10 volunteers. So that will save you a bit of time if the admins are doing that for the volunteers. Now, you can also view some reports for those volunteers. Volunteers can also log in and do these reports on their own profile. So they can see some evidence of hours they've done. Admins also have an option to create different committee groups. So this is basically a way admins can, group your different volunteers into different committees. This can really be anything you need it to be that's kind of relevant to your organization. This will also give the volunteers an option to communicate with other committee members. So in this example, this volunteer is an office assistant. So when they log into the portal, they can actually contact the other office assistants through the portal. That's basically an email that's sent out from the system, and they won't see the email address of the other group members. So that's a nice feature that can be done in the system. I'll just touch briefly on a couple more modules that we have, one being the e-learning. So basically, in the system, you can create your own e-learning documents. This can be things like videos, pictures, multiple choice questions. You can add a pass mark to it, so they must have 100%, 80% in order to pass. These videos can be embedded into the system. And these trainings can be connected to qualifications. So in some examples, specific roles, they might need, hand hygiene training must be a mandatory training before they can sign up for a role. So until they've done that training, that volunteer won't even see that role pop up. They'll basically see, the training as mandatory, and that will be an easy way for you to manage, who's done this training for that specific role as well. Now, from the system, you can email all your volunteers. So basically, you can do a bulk email to everyone all in one if you need to. It also has a search criteria or a filter. So this can basically be any field that's in the system that you want to filter down. So that can be things like general availability. So if you need to fill a role, you're kind of under the pump and need to fill a role the next day, You can send out, okay, who's available on Fridays. You can add that search. You can see 26 people have ticked Friday as available. And you can send out a quick email saying, guys, shift available, please sign up as soon as possible. You can also add multiple search criteria. So if you want to know who's available on a Friday, but also who's interested in being an admin, you can do 2 in 1, and you can see, perfect, there's one person available. That person's perfect for the role. I'm going to send out an email or even a text message in this case as well. So you can see email history and text message history overall. So not just in the profile. So that's basically gives the admins access to see what's been sent out and who that has been sent out to. You can also create different email templates just to make that process easier and a bit more streamlined as well if you're sending out, similar emails throughout the week. Now I'll touch briefly on our rostering system. But basically we've got a nice simple color-coded calendar view that you can see what's needed to be filled and what has been filled. So basically the blue means you've got enough volunteers confirmed for those roles. So you can see the 27th, 19th, 20th, they're all been filled. So you don't need to worry about filling those shifts. To basically fill the shifts, all you need to do is click on the day. That will come up with the different roles. You can see in some of the blue roles, if you need to, you can remove a volunteer. You can send out an email. You can even start the clock from here. But if you need to assign a volunteer, you just need to click that assign volunteer button. This will come up with the filter option again. So this will give you the option to do things like status, qualifications, no overlapping assignments. In this case, I might just do accepted and no overlapping assignments. That will then search, everyone in that filter, all your volunteers. So you can individually assign them if you're happy with that volunteer for that role, or you can bulk assign. So if you've got 10 spots to fill, you can assign them all in one. Or if, an example, you need the volunteer to sign up for that role, so it's basically first in, best dressed, you can send out an email to all those volunteers in that filter, and you can let them know, you might have a template saved, but you can let them know, hey guys, shift available Friday, please sign up, first in, best dressed. So whatever works best for your organization can be done. In certain cases as well, you can have a limited admin role. So I know a lot of organizations, they might have people doing the roster in the system, but not really doing anything else. You can give them access to just the roster as well. So they're not going to see all of these tabs at the top. They'll just see the assign tab and just have access to do that. Now we've got really intricate and detailed reports in the system. Basically, we've got built-in reports that shows you kind of comparisons and trends. You can export that. You can save those as well if you need to. We've also got schedule reports, so you can see all the schedules for specific roles, or you can get things to print out if you need to see a full schedule for volunteers. There's obviously hours schedule as well. We've also got what we call a raw data report. So basically this is essentially anything you have in the system, including custom fields, you can report on. So this can be basic contact info, all your custom fields, qualifications, general interest committee, availability, hours logged, and even some other settings if you need. But basically, that's going to come up with all the info you have in the database here. So as you can see, there's a huge number of fields. A lot of those are custom fields, but you can then export that, save that, whatever you need to do in the system, you can do as a report. So important to know that any field that you create or that we create for you can be reported on, and that can be done at any point as well. Now, I might quickly just touch on the volunteer side. So I've showed you what the administrator side looks like. I'm just going to show you quickly what the volunteers will see. So volunteers can basically use the system in two different ways. One, they can log in on the desktop, like the admins can if they want. They can also use an app, which is called My Impact, which is the most common way volunteers use the system. As you can see, much more simple compared to the admin view. That's obviously deliberate. We don't want to confuse the volunteers. We want to make that as easy as possible for them to use. So when they log in, they'll see their upcoming shifts. They can see their badges. Social media can be connected. Personal messages, you can have files for them to access as well. And things like your newsletter from the front page as well. So usually the volunteers will only use a couple of these tabs. One is the opportunities. So this is basically where they sign up for the different shifts and roles. They can do that through the calendar view. So they can click on the day and the role and then click the sign up button. They can also have a list view. So basically that will come up with all the shifts available, show them what is filled and what isn't. Then they can individually or they can bulk sign up as well. So they can filter, things out, specific roles or the day as well. They can change it to a weekly calendar view, a daily view as well. And once they do sign up, that will generate all the shifts in their calendar for them. So basically, you can see there's a remove button here. So this is a way they can cancel out their shift that they've signed up for. Now, this can be configured. So for example, you can get rid of that remove button so they don't have that option. You can also configure a time frame on this so that 24 hours before the shift starts, that remove button is taken off. And you can have a disclaimer, at the top of that role that says, please provide more than 24 hours notice. If not, please call. So that can be configured in the system. Once they are signed up or have been assigned by the admins, that will generate that calendar view for them and generate their shifts here as well. So like I said earlier, they can connect their personal calendar and that will basically reflect this view and all their shifts will be integrated. Volunteers can also log hours. So this example is basically once they finish their shift, they would log on to the system and log the hours for the day. These are called feedback fields. So basically these can be anything from drop downs, text boxes, incidents fields that can be quite important. So you can choose what questions you ask the volunteers based on the role. So you can have, 1 or 2 questions, or you can have 10 questions based on that role. That's really up to you and how that's configured. Volunteers can also see their own hours in the system. They can create goals for themselves as well. And then they can also do, a detailed hour report as well. So you don't have to do that on their behalf. This is the contact tab, so where they can contact other committee members. And here is the training portal as well. So basically, if they need to do their training, you can actually send them a link that will bring them directly to here. Or they can come into their profile. This is a really Simple example, like photo release form, but that can be in the training section if you need as well. Volunteers can also update their contact info. Here's where they do their calendar and email reminders. And volunteers can also upload documents, change their info, update references, confirm agreements, acknowledgements. This is an example of when it's needed after the fact, after they've applied. You can really update that info at any point, and you can get that information uploaded by the volunteer. So the admin's not doing that on their behalf. Perfect. That is the end of the demo. So I'll get back into the slides, and then we're almost ready for question time as well. Awesome. So I'm just going to show you a couple of testimonials about volunteer impact and some organizations in Australia and around the world that have had some success using the platform.
So why did I select this product? It integrated with my background check product. I can tell you that the sales and customer support people are outstanding. Direct contact with a person that's talking me through all of the steps, doing training for us and my whole team. And inside the product is so much help. 24/7, you can chat with a person who's really a person. At 3 o'clock in the morning when we were first converting, I was talking, I was playing, I was trying to figure out something. I hopped onto the chat and I was thinking there's nobody going to be around at 3 o'clock in the morning Eastern Standard Time. And lo and behold, within a couple minutes, I was talking to a guy who was on the other side of the globe, who was answering all of my questions for me. It is fun and kind, and I don't ever feel stupid. So I can't say enough about the customer support and the sales part.
Yeah, it was value for money and on budget for what we wanted. Easy to implement. We had 300 volunteers already on the books. So we were able to extract the information into a spreadsheet, and then they took it away and uploaded all the information in the right place, gave the usernames and the passwords that we could then write out to the volunteers with. Better Impact is I call it a cradle to grave. It's an application right the way through a volunteering journey. So once they do their application form, they're already setting up their volunteer page. But the team were very, very supportive, as I said already, very, very supportive.
Why did we go with Volunteer Impact? Because there were a few other options out there for us. It's definitely an affordable management system. It was something, it actually cost us less to move towards Better Impact than it was with our former system. There were a lot of volunteer-centered features, allowing the volunteers to own their own experience. And that was something that we saw right off the bat. We had heard of some great features like self-scheduling and how volunteers can go in and update and change their own addresses, schedule time off for vacations. So these were things that were definitely selling points for us. My impact page gives the volunteers the opportunity to absolutely own their experience with us. Everything that they need is at their fingertips. If they need extra resources or easy ways to communicate with us, it's all there through that.
I've been using Better Impact since about 2016, 2017, and I absolutely love it. My favorite part of the system, and it's really hard to actually just come up with one thing, but I would certainly focus on the personal profile reporting. You can fully customize it to get as much data as you need, as much information as you need, or as little as you need in that one report. It's incredible.
Awesome. So as you can see, a lot of the organizations we currently work with, they have very diverse range of, what their favorite thing is about the software. So it's always great to hear that positive feedback. Now, why people love Better Impact. So yeah, we pride ourselves on that positive feedback. We do have a really good rating on Trustpilot at the moment. So basically, we have a rating of 4.8 out of 5 on Trustpilot with over 300 reviews. So we definitely pride ourselves on that positive feedback. That comes a lot from our support. Having that support always available to you with no cost. So we'll never charge you for support of the platform. And we do have access 24/7, 5.5 days a week, thanks to the different time zones in America and Canada. So a little bit about Better Impact. So it actually started by a fluke. A CEO, Tony, had a passion project building a web-based volunteer management software for a residential hospice. He founded basically the beginnings of Better Impact. So that was over 20 years ago. So we have been going on for a very, very long time. We're a smaller company, but we do have a global impact. We've got offices in UK, Canada, US, and Australia. We've got customers all around the globe. We specialize in volunteer management, volunteer impact, but we also provide modules in donor, client, and member impact as well. And we basically we're here to help company. So always here to help, whether that's start your database off or when you're a couple of years in, making tweaks and making sure that you're making the most out of the software as well.